Today's question comes from Steve, and his thing is a mount question in regards to self-defense. So he's curious about whether or not you should go to like a low mount here with our hooks in, and our hips driving in, or if we want to get to a nice high mount here, which a lot of times we use in jiu-jitsu. He's kind of looking for, kind of what my end goal is, thinking about it in a fight situation. So my lovely assistant, Mr. Adam Wilson, and I here are going to show you some ideas for using mount in a fighting situation, a self-defense situation, a hand-to-hand altercation for all you guys, because I know all as soon as we bring up self-defense, there's always going to be some insecure tard that's going to go, what about a gun? Why can't you just shoot them? I mean, we could possibly, right? That's your thing. But again, if you have some disagreement with someone, I would rather just take care of it and we both go our separate ways afterwards, right? Anyway, sorry, there's been a couple of those comments recently. I'm like, it's so annoying. Again, I'm from Kentucky and I have firearms too, but it doesn't mean that I want to go shoot everyone every time someone has a disagreement with me. Anyway, let's get to the video. This is against an untrained person. We're talking about someone that doesn't do jiu-jitsu, right? They're just a person that was at the bar, they were talking trash to you, and you took them down to the ground. Okay, so we're here from this position. And we're going to say they weren't talking trash. They physically tried to attack you, or they got up in your space, right? So when we get to mount, for me, I start off in a lower mount with the hips driving in and a really strong drive into the hips, okay? If it's a technical person, I'll immediately try to get up to mount, high mount as fast as I can, but I like being in this low mount position for a couple things. One, I can make a massive amount of pressure with my hips into them, and I'll talk about why that's important in just a second. Okay, and from here, I don't put my hooks in with the grapevine. I actually hook my heels in or even cross my feet behind their butt. This is what we call at my gym digging the spurs in. I stole it from my student Corey. We're gonna dig the spurs in back here. And what I like about this is this right here, if he straightens his leg out, even if he's just freaking out and he straightens his leg out, he now, I don't have anything gluing me to his body, right? Whereas in here, he can try to fight his feet. It's gonna be tough. And every time he bridges up, I'm glued into that position, right? So that's number one right there. Another thing too is you got to be careful about weird stuff happening. So I like being able to drive my hips up, but have the ability to make space away from this face. I don't really this is from a self-defense situation. I don't necessarily want to be down here with my body close to him too much, or even down in a high mount here, where if I'm up here like this, in a really high position, maybe you can go to like an S mount or something like that. But if we're in like a nice high mount, where we would start to attack arm bars and stuff in the gym, the problem is for me being a guy, my groin is really close to his mouth. And again, maybe you don't think about this, but people will bite you. In a self-defense situation, they will bite you left and right. I remember one of my first coaches, he had a guy on the ground and was just dealing with him and holding him down, and the dude straight up bit him. Now the bite's one thing, but then he had to have antibiotics and stuff like that because it was infected. So what ends up happening a lot of times, and it's like clockwork, it's so predictable. If you put massive amount of pressure into a person in mount, you're driving to their chest, they will almost always turn their back. They just don't know any better. They haven't been trained, and they just freak out, and they do whatever the most instinctive thing is, and it's almost always a bridge, and they try to turn away like this. Now, we have to be careful on that bridge. If we are really tight with our hips here, if he bridges up, and I'm too tight, I will get rolled over. And so what you've got to do is, as he opens up, we open up a little bit, and then we can get here. Now, this is like my go-to, the gift wrap. Fantastic position, right? I can literally control both of his hands here. He's not doing anything. If you wanted to, give him some damage, you could. In MMA, this was I was always trying to get here. We called it the gift wrap in MMA because, again, your guy was wrapped up for you. You could punch him, you could submit him, whatever. But again, for our standpoint, it's easy to control. I'm in a position where I can control both arms. If I don't want him to roll away from me, if I wanted to do damage, I could, or I could have put him into a submission or whatever else. And his face is away from me. He cannot bite me. So for me, brother, that's what I'm looking for. So when it comes to mount, if I'm thinking about it in a street fight situation, high mount's perfectly fine. This is just my idea on it. I like gluing in here and being super heavy. You can look at my knees right now. I should be able to take all of my weight off of the person, off the mat, and off the ground. Should be driving into the person. Almost always. You get an untrained person in mount, they start to bridge up and go. We'll go the other direction this time. As he opens, I open my leg up, bring the knee right behind the back. And then from here, we're in a nice strong position where we can control him. And I don't have to be worried about being struck bit, anything like that. I can hold this position as long as I need to. And so, to answer your question, that is what I would do if I was in a situation with mount. Now, if you like high mount for a self-defense situation, completely fine. That's completely okay. That's what I use, and so again, that's what I'm going to share with you on the channel. Again, as always, to me, there's not necessarily a one right way to do anything. There's lots of different ways, but that's the way that I prefer to sort of go through it, and I've used that once. So I haven't had too many street fights where I've had to like get into mounts or whatever. Most of the time, like kneel and belly or take them down, and it's usually over. But I've had to get there once. So again, hopefully that's helpful to you, brother. Thank you for the question. I'm finished. Adam.